Garry's Mod is, undeniably, one of the most robust video games ever created. It's as much a platform for the creation of new games as it is a game itself. If anything, Gmod's popularity as a platform for custom game modes has superseded its identity as a sandbox game. Valve games have a rich history of being modded into wholly new, unique products. It's almost poetic, then, that a Half-Life 2 mod made this phenomenon even more accessible to the masses. The Source Engine's fundamental pillars are present in almost every game mode. Player movement and control, the basic sound effects and how they're affected by their environment, and the ways that different map features are typically modeled and rendered. More often than not, custom maps still incorporate assets from Counter-Strike Source, Half-Life 2, and its episodes, occasionally leading to that liminal feeling that Gmod has more recently become known for. Gmod has been the host to so many different game modes of varying popularity, many of which have leaked over into other games or even their very own products. Many of these modes, such as Prop Hunt or Trouble in Terrorist Town, were originally part of other Source products, but almost invariably, Garry's Mod is where they hit their stride, seeing wider adoption and more advanced development than other host games could allow. Social servers, games of deception, building games, both symmetrical and asymmetrical PvP modes, and basically anything else one can think of. But there is one genre of Garry's Mod game mode that is still, to this day, incredibly popular among the 40-some thousand players that play Gmod on a daily basis: roleplay servers. Now, chances are that if you're familiar with Garry's Mod roleplay, you have a very specific experience associated with it.
Hey, can I ask you a question, dude? Do you know where X-Leo is?
He's breaking NLR! He's breaking NLR! An NLR break! Another NLR break!
You're Mr. Con! Mr. Con! Mr. Con, you not hit me!
Hell. Shut the f up, you're British.
I'm going to report this to Garry.
You're gonna report me to Garry?
You like not? Arrest me! Why are you arresting me?
You slowly take off your shirt. I grab your nipples very, very nice. Do you want to continue? Yes or no?
Oh my god. It's just so fun. You killed 7 people!
Mishclick.
Gmod RP's reputation for being positively full of obnoxious children and power-tripping admins is admittedly well-deserved, but underneath the prepubescent surface, there's actually quite a bit going on here. Gmod RP has a long, storied history reaching all the way back to the Half-Life 1 days. Like the other game modes I mentioned earlier, RP began as a new way of playing completely unrelated Half-Life 1 mods, such as the Opera or the Specialists, the latter of which eventually received a standalone roleplay spin-off. Role-playing servers of the time were largely comprised of normal game servers with abnormal rules, but some early plugins were developed, including one that remains a staple to this day: proximity chat. The concept here is that only players in your immediate vicinity can hear your voice or read your text chat. Global chat is restricted to out-of-character messages, or OOC, which can be read from anywhere, but are not allowed to contain in-character information, at least in theory. Now, I don't think I need to explain the impact Half-Life 2 had on the greater gaming landscape, but those who aren't too familiar with it might not be aware of specifically how influential it was on the modding and indie game scenes. Even ignoring the full-on AAA games that were developed in this engine, Source is home to so many unique experiences, many of which started out as humble modifications of Half-Life before gaining enough recognition to spawn standalone games. Garry's Mod was launched as a mod, in December of 2004, just a month after Half-Life 2's release. The titular Garry Newman, no relation, continued updating the mod throughout 2005, culminating in the final version of Garry's Mod 9 in November of that year. Behind the scenes, Newman had been approached by Valve Software themselves, who were interested in publishing a standalone, paid version of Garry's Mod. After a little bit of uneasy back and forth, Garry's Mod 10 released in November of 2006 and has received regular updates over the intervening 15 years. While Garry and Facepunch were hard at work at this first commercial version of the game, modders were likewise hard at work at the first role-playing game modes for Garry's Mod 9, and that list has only grown in the years since. Popular modes include Half-Life 2 RP, Pulsar Effect Roleplay, and more recently, GTA RP. But one particular mode stands out from the rest, not only as the most popular, but also as the platform upon which almost every smaller roleplay game mode was built: DarkRP. DarkRP is an incredibly simple game mode. The default installation includes a currency system with paydays, taxes, and the ability to exchange money between players. It also features very basic jobs like citizen, civil protection, mayor, and gun dealer. Each job has its own income for the payday system, their own abilities such as setting laws and taxes or buying weapons shipments, and default player models pulled from Half-Life 2. The core DarkRP package also includes a weapon that acts as empty hands, doubling as a set of keys for the door ownership system, allowing players to lock doors to their home, base, or business. Rules obviously vary from server to server, but a few are constant defaults. Random deathmatching, or RDM, is not allowed. This means you can't kill other players without roleplay justification. New Life Rule, or NLR, means that when you die, you forget everything that happened in that lifetime, and can't return to the roleplay situation you were already in to get revenge or continue that situation. But that's really all the mode includes by default. From there, it's on the server owners to set rules and curate add-ons to flesh out gameplay possibilities for their players while also keeping them in check. These add-ons could be custom jobs, alternative ways of making money, base building and defense resources, plugins to add entirely new things to do, ridiculously goofy models. Explain yourself! Why do you look like that? His name is Furry Hunter. There really is no limit. DarkRP is an incredibly modular, expandable game. There's room for basically anything you can imagine. And yes, I said game on purpose. This modularity means that every server is unique from the next. Every server is essentially its own little MMORPG, with currency and inventories and leveling that persist only in that one server, which give way to communities of players that are similarly constant in that one place. Of course, trends emerged, some custom jobs and items are so omnipresent they may as well be part of the core experience, but every server has its quirks. Unlike MMOs though, there are no quests in DarkRP. There are no NPCs, or at least if there are, they exist solely to buy, sell, or store items. DarkRP relies entirely on the human players in each server to collectively create their own stories, their own gameplay, their own society. Whether that society is somewhat grounded or batshit insane anarchy depends on the server, or sometimes just the day. Is the mayor a power-hungry authoritarian? Is one large group of raiders terrorizing everybody's base? My favorite type of player is the one who builds their own business or attractions from scratch. I've seen plinko machines, pizzerias, weed dispensaries, and so much more. Some servers have DJ jobs that essentially permit one particular class to mic spam, setting up concerts where they share their favorite music or even play instruments and sing into their microphone.
Fuck it, I don't even know that part either.
I absolutely love all of this. Given a sandbox with zero structure and basically no rules other than don't kill each other for no reason, the creativity of some players shines through to create an experience completely unlike anything else in gaming. Players like this are the reason I keep coming back to DarkRP after 10 years and thousands of hours. But that is only half of how DarkRP is played. The other half is an extremely capitalist game, a game of basing, farming, and raiding. In the early hours of your tenure on any server, gaining capital is priority number one. You could start a legitimate business, but that's slow going, and in all honesty, the raiding part makes that an exercise in futility. You'll inevitably spend more time and money replacing things you lost to thieves than you make from actually doing business. That, or you have to spend an inordinate amount of time building base defenses, which isn't easy for a new player. Hell, I've played hundreds of hours of this mode and I still can't do this. The illegal end of the economic spectrum is far more lucrative. Farming drugs and running counterfeiting operations are usually the best way to make your fortune. Early implementations of these professions were pretty bare bones. Simple money printers that have to be babysat to keep them from overheating, and a job where you sell drugs to other players exactly the same way as a gun dealer. But some servers have really spruced up these jobs in recent years. One server I've been playing uses mods that make cultivating or cooking drugs a much more involved process, a whole mode of play in itself. Weed farmers have to worry about electricity for their lights, heat generated by said lights, drying the plants, packing it, crossbreeding seeds, and selling it to a dealer. Money printers have likewise been fleshed out, but true to form are a much more passive way to earn money. The server I play has their own printer system with the option to put multiple printers in a server rack with built-in cooling, as well as the ability to upgrade printing speed or reduce noise so as not to attract thieves. But the thieves will come, and it's a matter of when, not if, they will prevail. Raiding is the pastime of choice for many players. They'll usually work in groups to break through your defenses, kill you, and take your prized contraband. These aspects are just as important to the core DarkRP experience as the more creative ones, but I have to say, I'm not a big fan of how they've changed in the years since I really last dived into this game mode. Bases are more complicated than they've ever been, making solo raids basically impossible. Base entrances are usually opaque hallways with a series of keypadded doors. Each takes 15 seconds to crack, makes loud beeping noises, and every wall in that hallway is bound to have hidden windows that your opponent can open and shoot you in the back. And that's not the only way DarkRP has changed for the worse. The game's lack of traditional structure, and infamy for rule breaking, makes it extremely hard to moderate. And for that reason, servers have adopted some pretty convoluted rules about what you're allowed to do, when, and to whom. Basically, every server requires you to publicly advertise that you're raiding, mugging, or carrying out a hit on someone, which quickly consumes half of your keyboard with binds. KOS signs are standard, granting the occupants of a building the right to kill unwanted visitors on site without breaking RDM rules. Problem is, because every single server is run independently, rules and their enforcement vary in extremely slight ways between communities. Some communities say you aren't allowed to kill someone for shooting at you until they damage you, or that you can't shoot at pursuing cops until they swing their arrest baton. Others say obvious intent to kill or detain is enough to open fire. Rules about base building are even more granular, with changes as specific as how many keypads a base can have, or rules stating you can't build your base in a way that requires invaders to jump or crouch to navigate it. And the worst part is, none of these rules have noticeably improved the experience of playing DarkRP. Mass RDM and trolls are still infuriatingly common. Even if you follow the rules to a T, you'll end up spending a third of your play sessions on rooftops explaining yourself to admins or making a case as to why the other party didn't follow the rules. Logging tools can only do so much, and they just aren't built for the level of granularity found in modern server rules. There are multiple times when, had I not been using Shadowplay to record clips of basically everything I do, these admin cases would have been decided in the other party's favor. Arguably, the overabundance of rules in modern DarkRP servers mean that moderating them now takes more work, as all involved parties must basically act as rules lawyers, taking upwards of 5 minutes to resolve simple disputes over gunfights. It's good for rules to be clearly defined, crucial even if you employ this long-winded style of moderation. But having acted as a moderator on a small handful of servers back in the day, I can't help but feel that staff aren't given enough room for common sense judgment calls. If someone joins the server for the very first time and starts punching or shooting random people on the street, they aren't there to play the game properly, and they probably never will be. Warnings aren't necessary. Not to mention that Gmod has a real racism and homophobia problem, and servers range from half-heartedly discouraging it, with temporary bans and pushover warnings, to outright participating in it. It's become clear that the vast majority of servers that do disallow discriminative language and behavior intervene in only the most overt cases, and do so only because they don't want players with functioning moral compasses to leave, or worse, decide not to pony up cash for VIP benefits. And while I'm making brave accusations, the rules that have been put into place seem to protect little more than the ability for basing players to keep their contraband by making raiding much more difficult, as well as neutering the role of police classes. I have a bit of a conspiracy theory as to why this is. There's nothing more demoralizing than losing in-game items, and servers don't want players to log off when they lose their shit. But I think it's even deeper than that. Perhaps the biggest negative change Garrys mod has undergone in the last few years is just how commercial it's become. Rigged casinos, CSGO-style item boxes, and donator perks are basically inescapable. Servers have always offered VIP perks for donators, but these days they're full-on businesses. Optimal gameplay is locked behind a paywall. The best printers, raiding tools, and jobs are reserved for those willing to shell out significant amounts of money, almost invariably more than the game itself costs. The worst example I've encountered is an otherwise decent community that locks a terrorist job behind a paywall. DarkRP terrorist jobs suck regardless. They do little besides disrupt roleplay, and almost invariably use the same horribly insensitive player models and sound effects that they did in 2011. But to lock it behind a paywall sends a very clear message. In a game mode where you were not allowed to kill people without reason, you are willing to waive that rule for those who line your pockets. Listen, I know running servers is expensive and difficult. I used to run an admittedly basic server back in the day, and that was hard. DarkRP server admins spend countless hours programming, managing, and moderating. Server plugins cost money, and so do the servers themselves. But a line has to be drawn somewhere, and letting people pay to break the rules is far past that line. I realize all of that probably sounds pretty bad, but I want to stress it doesn't completely ruin the server or anything. But if it does really bother you, servers with more respectable monetization are out there. Besides, if you want something more serious, you should probably be looking not to DarkRP, but to its spin-offs. Like any Garry's Mod game mode, DarkRP can be boiled down to a collection of Lua scripts. Because the scripts that make up this mode are so basic, it can easily be repurposed for all kinds of role-playing experiences. There are honestly far too many of these for me to list, let alone play, but I can name some notable ones. Quite a few are just basic reskins of DarkRP in new settings. There's a prominent genre of these servers set in the Second World War, such as 1942 RP. There's military RP, which tends to be a bit more serious. Each player is put through training, and there's a semi-realistic chain of command. This mode can be played in either PvP or PvE depending on the server. There will either be two armies facing off against each other, or an admin will orchestrate encounters and campaigns like a D&D dungeon master, spawning NPC opponents, organizing stagehands, and occasionally casting human players in the role of specific enemy characters. It plays sort of like a bullet-spongy, arcadey Arma. There's far more potential for goofiness and creativity in something as boundless as Gmod, and military RP provides experiences that cannot be had in any other game. There are a fair few spin-offs of military RP, namely Star Wars RP and Halo RP. Both are functionally identical to military RP, but are obviously set in their respective universes and trade out weapons, ranks, and character models for replacements from the source material. These also tend to focus much more on that campaign with the Game Master thing rather than PvP. Police RP, despite its unfortunate name, is a more serious take on DarkRP that allows for much better cops and robbers gunplay. Like military RP, certain jobs have strict rules and require specific training, but this enables much more grounded RP situations that feel much more fair than the combat encounters of DarkRP. Now of course, the ridiculously unfun nature of super bases and parties still rear their head here, but in my experience these players are far less common and are easily ignored in favor of doing literally anything other than raiding them. Police RP is admittedly a little less accessible to the casual player, but those willing to play along with the stricter rules are in for some of the most tense car chases, shootouts, and roleplay that Garry's Mod has to offer. Out of all the modes I've played, this is the one I plan to spend more time with. It manages to be taken more seriously than DarkRP, with less minging and fewer children, without becoming so slow that it fails to engage. Despite being a mod of a mod, DarkRP spawned many unique games. Not only did this genre of modification give way to future mods for games like Grand Theft Auto 5, they even informed the design choices of bespoke video games later down the line, including Gary Newman's own Rust. It's an undeniably strong legacy, but quite a few of those modes are still kicking, with no end of life in sight. And to me, that's emblematic of how compelling DarkRP was and still is. 5M, Rust, and VRChat draw some of the same crowd with some of the same appeal, but none of those games check all of the boxes. 5M lacks the creative potential. Rust doesn't have the rule set. VRChat doesn't have the combat or economy. And none have the expandability or modularity that keep Garry's Mod so compelling. This game is full of some of the most obnoxious, hateful players you're ever going to meet, and in the wrong community, it can be one of the worst experiences in gaming. But with the right community, it is the most unique role-playing game ever made. DarkRP and its offspring reward patience and good faith with multiplayer interactions that rank among the best gaming has to offer. And all it asks in return is that you do your part to give those same experiences to the other players just like you.